So, the first episode of the 411 on 911 was just me, where I was talking about some of the more, not really difficult, I just wanted to talk about some of the things that were like kind of triggers, I guess. But what gave me the idea for this podcast, and again, Lee has no idea what I'm going to ask him. I don't remember the exact comment or who left it, but I just remember it was a guy. I think it was a man, or it seemed like it was a man based on the username. But he said something like, now we've heard some of the sad calls. Why don't you tell us now about some of your wins? Meaning some of the calls that went right. And I don't know if it's because the past few days I've been in a little bit of a funk, but I got kind of upset because when I read that comment, I started thinking and I couldn't really come up with a valid, in my mind, like a legit, for real success story.
There's so few and far between.
And I thought it would be interesting, number one, because I know of one that you have that I want you to talk about. But I wanted to ask you on camera and put you on the spot. Can you remember any of mine? And I'm just not able to right now? Or?
Yeah. I can actually think of this one's huge.
Which one?
There was a call that came in November of a year. I wasn't going to say, well, there was a call come in cool weather was the point. But there was a call that came in for an individual that was found in a vehicle, unresponsive. The update before we got there was not breathing. And we showed up, and this person had been found sitting upright in a vehicle at whatever time.
Was this me and you, or
me, you, and my partner? Because you were not even
a little while.
You were not even working that day. It was one of those days we were having a class.
Was this the OD?
No, we don't know what happened here.
No, I don't.
This was a person that was somewhere that supposedly nobody even knew who it was, but they're sitting in the passenger seat of an empty vehicle, and they were found unresponsive. You and I and my partner showed up, and the fire department had already pulled this person out of the vehicle and started CPR before we got there. You and I and our other partner showed up, and they're doing CPR. We come rushing in, and I slid.
Was this in the carport?
Yeah. And I slid the blue jeans up, and there's extreme lividity from the knees down, which means this person has been down for a while. Had I been the first person that showed up and I checked for that lividity and found it, my apologies, this person's done.
Mm-hmm.
But the volunteer fire department showed up. They snatched that person out, and they went to work on them. Well, you and I and our partner started helping them. We got an IV, we got an intubation. We put them in the truck, and both of you wanted to ride it, so I chose to drive. Okay, fine. Y'all have at it. Well, without going into detail with things that people won't understand, you guys had run through protocol to the point that by the time we got to the interstate, you had ROSC. Tell me again.
Return of spontaneous circulation.
Yes, thank you. Which is unheard of, particularly on someone that has the lividity that where I didn't feel like this code should have even been started.
It must not have been like true lividity.
No, it was. I can assure you it was. I've been doing this for a very long time. Anyway, the long and short of it, 8 days later, this individual left the hospital on a walker, and they said with a mental capacity of about an 8 or 9-year-old. But they walked out of the hospital on a walker. And it was you and that other person did all of it.
I know the scenario that you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't think I rode in on that call.
No, you and her were in the back. I drove. And that person that I felt like no one should have started that on walked out of the hospital on a walker.
Do you know what's bad? I remember the scenario,
Mm-hmm.
but I know what call you're talking about. I don't even remember riding that call in. It's questionable whether I actually did because I don't remember.
Well, I can assure you did, because you were quite adamant that you were going to ride with my partner, so I drove. And you actually didn't like her initial treatment. Apparently it worked, because
Why she go buy carb or something?
Yeah.
Probably would.
Absolutely. But I've been doing this for a very long time, here and in a short hop environment. And that is the only cardiac arrest patient I have had walk out of the hospital upright. I've had a couple of vegetables, but that's the only upright patient I have had. And I wasn't even in the back for that. Like I said, everything that this patient presented with, had I been the first person on scene, they were DRT. They were dead right there.
We don't have to keep talking about that specific call, but what struck me and the reason I wanted to do this with you again is because when I read that comment, now tell us about your wins, I panicked a little bit because I'm sitting there trying to think of wins, and they're so few and far between. And I knew that
Everyone's are.
If anybody sometimes my brain has this great way of protecting me, which is that I can't remember shit.
Well,
I don't remember anything.
There's another really, really huge win that I actually don't know how to tell the story of us.
Me and you.
Mm-hmm. And give me just a minute and you'll figure out what I'm talking about. I don't know any way to tell that story without it being a HIPAA violation. 2-year-old, 5-year-old, whatever the case was, shot with a high-powered rifle.
Oh, yeah.
In mom's arms.
Yeah.
No,
wait. You mean shot with a gun?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, that was loud.
There's no way that should have turned out positive, particularly with what we were presented with, that we found out it really wasn't what we thought we were looking at. But
we've actually talked about that on the video before.
Yeah,
it's an old video, but
Mm-hmm.
We talked about that call because we were talking about how scared we were because we thought that we were being chased by the shooter.
But there again, that was a really huge win.
Yeah.
Despite how it turned out, the person survived, but it was horrible.
A win, but I don't feel like it was. What am I? So y'all, this is something y'all are gonna learn about me doing lives. I have to think about what I say, and when I put a video out, I edit out all of the the pauses. But of course, that's one of the most memorable calls I've ever been on. But the reason I didn't count that as like a win for myself as a story that I wanted to tell about my win or whatever was because I don't feel like he had a good outcome despite me. Like, I don't feel like I actually improved the situation at all.
And I disagree. I always have, because we had a 50, 60, maybe at most 70-pound patient with an extreme bilateral blood loss
Mm-hmm.
that, despite the outcome, survived. And that's kind of huge. To stop that kind of blood loss bilateral, that's a win.
When I read that comment about tell us about the wins, there was one call that immediately came to mind, but you're going to know what I'm talking about because you remember you were the one that told me and you were there when I broke down about it. But there was a call one time. It was like a 20-minute response time. Came in as a middle-aged male that went into cardiac arrest. It was witnessed. It took us probably at least 15 minutes to get on scene. And my partner and I, it was just me and my partner, I think it was just somebody ended up driving because we were both in the back. But anyways, we worked this cardiac arrest and I put him on the cardiac monitor after. Well, so we worked the arrest, we intubated, did all the things, got a pulse back, had good end-tidal CO2, and I put him on the monitor and saw it was a big old STEMI, which is a heart attack, because the closest hospital didn't have a cath lab. So since he was no longer in cardiac arrest, I went on to a different hospital that had a cath lab. And I was so proud because by the time we got to the hospital, he was intubated, obviously, but he was looking at me and he would like follow me with his eyes. And I was like, he's still there.
There's somebody home.
He's in there. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can finally say that I was there and had a direct part in actually saving somebody's life. And then I don't know how many days later it was, but I was pulling up in the driveway and you called me. You remember?
Mm-hmm.
And
I do.
He was in ICU and was like following basic commands and everything, had another heart attack and died. And I just lost it. I was so upset about that. That was soul crushing. We worked so hard.
Going along with that, I have a really good friend that I responded to a call on a family member. And when I got there, this person was talking to me, but they were in a foul situation. And put them in the truck. We took off for the hospital. I did everything I was supposed to do. It was going well. I called the hospital asking, do you want me to give lidocaine or do you want me to shock what I'm looking at? And while I'm on the phone with the doctor, this person became pulseless. I told the doctor, I said, never mind. He just went pulseless. I'm fixing to shock. I will be there in 3 minutes. Hit him with a little Edison medicine and we showed up. And coming out of the truck, the patient raised his right arm to show me that he still had his blood pressure cuff on. So I took it off. So he is aware of his surroundings enough to tell me, hey, I still got a blood pressure cuff on. We roll in. His family's there. This particular person had been a medic longer than myself, so I felt like I was on trial, but I told him everything I had done, everything that happened, and it all went well. And I was expecting it to be great. Well, 3-4 hours later, I'm sitting in front of the computer doing PCRs and all. And this person calls me on my personal cell phone and says, hey, man, what's up? How's it going? And it had been going really well, but the patient made it through surgery, but in recovery had another heart attack and died. And I was crushed because it was not only a friend of mine, but it was one of my greatest accomplishments. And he died in recovery at the hospital. And I mean, it took me weeks to get over that because I was crushed. Because I knew that one was going to turn out great, but it didn't. It was awful.
Remember when you told me about mine? I broke down and squalled right here in the driveway. But it bothered me the other day when I guess whoever left me that comment, thank you. You gave me content for a podcast, but it bothered me so much when I read that comment, and I was like, what are the wins? It bothered me so much because it's very different. The reality is very different than what people think it is. You're either running calls on people that shouldn't have called 911. They should have went to their regular doctor, or you're running call on somebody that needs attention, but it's not anything super exciting. And then like truly life or death calls, most of the time, those don't end up well. I guess the biggest calls where we actually make, I wonder if you agree with this, the calls where we actually make an impact would be the trauma calls, right?
I would like to say that, but what I was thinking, where I think we make the biggest difference, calls, whether it be trauma or medical, but we show up at the ER and our patient is presenting
normal,
not normal, but insignificant. But they were circling the drain when we got there. Those are the ones that we leave the hospital feeling like we're looked down upon when we probably made the most difference.
Good, Bailey, that was loud.
He's so rude. But I truly believe the biggest difference we ever make is the calls where we leave the hospital feeling insignificant based on how we were treated and talked to when we got there.
That did
because people just don't understand what we rolled up on.
That reminded me of a win. Long time ago. Condi ran this call with me, but I was a new medic. A child drowned in the pool, was pulled out. CPR was started. I got there, and Condi responded.
If you're going to ever show up in a bad situation, that's who you want with you.
He was there. I was a new medic, and he was a lot like you, actually. He was very... He let me do my thing, but he was there as
the ultimate
supporter. Yeah. And anyway, his child drowned in the pool. We got there, and it was full rest. I did all the things, got a pulse back, got the child to the hospital. And we did such a good job that I found out that the kid ended up being discharged.
Wow.
And I was livid. And I think it was one of those situations where they just truly didn't
appreciate what had happened prior. Yeah.
I don't know if they thought we were, I don't know, but.
Not to overstep my bounds, because the person she's talking about, she probably shouldn't mention the name. We have not talked to him and asked for permission to discuss him, but he is he's a highlight in the field of EMS, and he's had a big impact on a lot of us. And I would like for you guys to meet him sometime, because he is.
You're like the only one of them.
He's what EMS needs to be.
You're like the only one of that group that's still even doing this.
Yeah, this is true. Well, he still is too, but he's so far away now.
Well,
But yeah, that was a long time ago.
Like when you finally hang it up and retire, that's going to be a big loss in a way because Lee Bullock's got it going on. With that said, I'm going to put Lee on the spot and brag on him. I'm going to make him tell the story and then I'll just hype him up and brag about him. But Lee has had the ultimate win.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. All right, yeah.
Because you just had the anniversary.
Yeah.
So this call that he's going to tell you about, I'll give you a minute to think about how you want to talk about it. But the call that he's going to talk about, he actually has a tattoo on his back with the date. Are the names on there? Initials of the patients and the date. It's an old tattoo, so you can't like read any of that anymore. But he has tattooed his body because of this story, and I would like for you to tell it, please, because I'm going to look real dumb if you don't.
I will, but it's quite uncomfortable. But especially because the person that was with me that day is not here anymore.
Are you crying?
I'm wanting to.
Why? Do you want me to get you a tissue?
No, but I miss J-Rob bad.
I know.
We got a call one day, and
the before you tell the story, the reason he's emotional, I'm sorry, I was not thinking about that part of it, but the person that he was with passed away of COVID in 2021.
2 weeks shy of retirement.
So, and they were very close. So,
lifelong.
Yeah.
We got a call one day, and we were shorthanded as a department for various reasons. I was the medic on the ambulance, and the person we're talking about was a new hire that was banished to the rescue truck. And then the superstar we were talking about earlier was driving engine one. So it was basically just the three of us and our chief at Station 1. And call come in for a trailer fire on the west side. And we show up, and I don't even know how to tell this without being a HIPAA thing. I really don't. I hope the people involved never see this. But the parent, that's the best way to put it, was standing in the middle of the road with skin hanging off of them because they had gone out of a window of this structure that was near the ceiling. In structure fires, you can have a temperature of 150 or so degrees at the floor, 300 degrees at 3 feet, 750 at eye level, and God knows what at the ceiling. We pull up, and it's a 60-foot long structure, and more than 2/3 of it is rocking. I mean, it's beyond hope. Well, an off-duty person runs up to the door as I'm climbing out and says, "There are 2 kids in this structure. Follow me, I'll show you where." And we go to the back door, and it won't open. And myself and 3 other guys are pulling on this door, and we somehow managed to fold the door in half from the bottom. And I looked in, and I could see a foot, like 6 feet away.
Was this an interior door?
No, it was an exterior
That was
door.
the exterior door.
Mhm.
Okay.
But I could see that foot. So I dove in there and belly crawled to it and grabbed it, and I handed it to J-Rob. And bear in mind, at this particular time, J-Rob had never been to rookie school. We had fought fire together in our volunteer department, but technically he wasn't even supposed to be in there. But I handed him this 2-year-old and I said, take off. And he said, what about you? He actually sat there and argued with me about leaving. I was like, this kid's only chance is for you to leave. And we argued for.
Were they breathing at all?
There's no way of knowing.
No.
We couldn't even see the kid. I mean,
No.
we couldn't see each other. It was
Yeah.
totally black. I mean, it's black 6 inches off the floor. When I looked in there, floor level, I could see the foot.
Mm-hmm.
So he finally left. And when he did, I turned to the left because the bed was in a corner of this little bitty structure. And I run up on a pile of something in the corner. And when I went to move it, it was heavy. And when I squeezed onto it, I realized there's another child in here. And I dug him out and I ran to the door and there's no one there. And I was like, oh my God, where is everybody? And when I'm trying to get my legs turned around where I can jump out this back door, another guy runs up and he takes this child from me and he runs off down that way. So I finally found somebody. I said, there's supposed to be 2 people in here, right? And they said, yes. And so we found 2. So I left. And I ran back and they had put both of these individuals in my ambulance. I was the medic, but I had ridden in on the pumper because we were short-staffed.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, the guy we were talking about had shown up from another engine company, and we had an off-duty guy. I haven't talked to him, so I can't give him his name, but he's a fantastic paramedic. They're working on both of these children in my ambulance. I shucked all my stuff right there in the yard and I climbed in there with them. And the long and short of it is the younger one survived, as far as I know, is alive and well today. The older one succumbed 3 days later in Birmingham. But we got 2 out. We saved 1. And that was the greatest thing he and I ever did together.
Did the mom live?
Mm-hmm. Painfully, but yes. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing I would like to say. When this story first came out, so many people were talking about her standing there. And they said, how could you leave your kids?
Oh, God.
They would have found my burned body laying there beside my kids. And you know what?
You like to think.
But you like to think
that. Choice sometimes.
But when your skin starts to melt, your brain takes over your heart.
Yeah.
And it's
a reflex.
It's a survival reflex. You don't have any say-so anymore. And this person went out a window that I don't know how they got up there and survived. I mean, it was horrific. And I hope that parent can take solace in the fact that they had no choice. The brain overrode the heart.
And the horror of stuff like that is like, I'm sure, let's just say, for example, that I don't know if there was or wasn't, this is purely hypothetical. Say there was like an article about it and, firefighters save blah, 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 or whatever. And my mind immediately goes to the comment section and that mother having to read people saying, they would have found my body, but like,
try it.
They don't understand. Like it's a reflex, like holding your breath. You can hold your breath, but you can't make yourself die, like You're
It's
going to
kind of
breathe.
funny that we're telling this story.
I just
Everybody that
Is she
knows
watching
us,
this right now?
no,
Oh.
but everybody that knows this story knows I have recently retired from the fire department. I don't do this anymore. I just got a message on my watch as my assistant chief wanting to know, hey, you've been on my mind. How you doing?
Oh.
So
Oh.
you put me on the spot. I'd like to wrap this
up. I'm sorry. I didn't.
It's fine, but I would like to wrap this up.
Well, you can. There was only one other thing I wanted to mention, but I can save it for another time.
Yeah, I mean, here we are. Let's go.
Well, the only other thing I was going to mention, and when I did my podcast the other day, you and I have talked about this recently. I talked with somebody I used to work with actually today about this same thing, but I think what the general public does not understand, and also what you are not prepared for when you go through paramedic school, is you're taught, how to read cardiac rhythms, give all the drugs, you fix this, you fix that. If A, then B, if B, then C. But what they don't prepare you for, and the absolute most stressful part of that job for me, was could get called for anything. Just say it's general sickness or whatever. And you get there and you find out that the living conditions are horrific. Family is not taking care of this patient. They're covered in their own feces, and they've done this. And basically you show up and somebody goes, here's all of our problems, and you're here now, so you have to do something about it. And so you're not taught you're taught if they're in SVT, you do this. If they're having a heart attack, you do this, but you're not taught how to show up and problem solve the plethora.
Their environment.
The DHR's hands are tied. The patient's not client, but they are, alert and oriented so they can make their own decisions. And it's just like this awful, awful cycle of bearing the weight of someone else's problems. I hope that made sense. But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
you and I talk about it all the time.
I was trying to find a really good way to put that, but there's no description for that. It's one of those things you have to see it to understand it.
And you're not, I think that's I don't want to say a failure of education, but in my experience, that was never talked about.
And it's one of those things, you're not only duty bound to fix it, you are humanly required to do something about this. And far too often, it doesn't matter how you feel about it, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
But you know that this person's environment is killing them. And you can't fix it.
There was one time it was a bad situation, and I took the patient to the hospital, and I told the nurse when I dropped the patient off, I was like, this is what I saw. This is what's going on. This is their environment. Because it wasn't an emergent thing. There was no reason to take this person to the ER medically. But I told the nurse, I was like, do not call me back to pick this patient up and take them home, because I won't do it. And sure enough, a couple hours later, I got a phone call. Hey, they're ready to go home. I was like, no, I've called DHR. Now you need to call DHR, and I am not I 1000% refused. And their hands are tied because they've got a patient who doesn't really need medical attention, but they can't go. Like, it's just such a
I can't go into details about the patient because that person would know who I'm talking about. But I got a call one time for a patient, and it actually took a considerable amount of time, like 30, 40 minutes, to convince them to go to the hospital. They needed to go to the hospital. And when we got there, I was giving my report when the doctor walked in, and I told him, I was like, this, and this has happened. This is what I've got. I said, it took me about 45 minutes to convince them to come here. And he said, you stop right there. He said, that's your problem. You need to understand that you're a paramedic, not a social worker. And I stood there and I stared at him for a minute. I said, let me tell you something. From the time I started basic until I got my paramedic, it was understood. It was beat into me. My job was to be a patient advocate. Mm-hmm. If I ever reach the point that you're at where I'm no longer a patient advocate, I'll find something else to do. And I stand by that today, and I'm getting tired of doing it. But yeah, when I stop being a patient advocate, I'll find something else to do, as you should.
Yeah.
And hell, that was 15 years ago, and that doctor's still a doctor.
Well, this isn't near as exciting, but again, the whole reason we're talking about this is because of that comment. Tell us about the wins. And honestly,
there aren't many.
Well, so there are, but they're not exciting. Like, y'all aren't going to be all the wins for me, and I know for you because you talk about it after doing it for so long. The wins aren't what you think they are. The wins are when you help an elderly person that has fallen down, and maybe they broke a hip or they've broken something, and you got to take them to the hospital, and you're able to hold their hand, have an amazing conversation, control their pain, and just love on them. Really, I know that might not be the correct.
Going along with what you're saying, more often than not, the win is the elderly person that's trapped in the bathtub or sitting next to their bed and can't get up, and you pick them up and you put them in their place of comfort.
And they're so happy.
That is a win.
Yeah.
Those are the wins that people don't think anything about.
Yeah. And those are the wins that aren't going to sell any books. They're not going to, make it to a podcast. But I know for me,
you made a difference in someone's life.
Those were the calls that, whether it could be something minor, just somebody that needed you, and you were actually able to help them. It was a pleasant experience for everybody. And when you parted ways, they were in better shape than when you found them. And maybe you
have 9 times out of 10, those patients don't go to the hospital. Yeah. They just needed help right here, right now for this, and their life's good again. Yeah. We didn't even take them to the hospital.
But yeah, sometimes
those are the biggest wins.
So, for me, the wins are not podcast worthy. Like, they're not, like I said, they're not going to sell any books or anything, but they're the easy calls that
you made the most difference.
You made a difference. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lee is emotionally wrecked right now.
I'm tired.
I'm sorry. I thought I kind of warned you a little bit the other day.
I guess, but
you forgot.
The dates and the timing sucks.
Well, so when I by warning him, he brought up the other day, he said today's the anniversary of that. And I was like, oh, wow. And I said, well, I didn't realize that, but I'm probably going to ask you about that on our podcast. And he was like, okay. So in all fairness, I didn't intentionally mean to blindside you. I thought you kind of knew that's where we were going, but the dates, I guess. But trying to see if there's anything else. Do you want me to let you go?
I would like to.
Okay,
Yes.
Lee is going to cut out. He's exhausted. He's worked enough for one night. I love you.
Love you too.
I'm going to mute your microphone.
Do what?
I had to mute your microphone. Okay. I am going to read all the comments when I get off. I'm not sure if they save, but I feel bad like not reading comments and responding to people. It feels kind of weird. I hope everything went okay. I hope that you guys enjoyed this, and I hope my husband isn't mad at me. He's not, but he's been having some brain fog lately, and I did warn him. I didn't tell him we're going to talk about this, this, and this. But he brought up the anniversary, so I was like, "Hey, I might ask you about that in the podcast," and he said, "Okay." So I thought I wasn't blindsiding him, but obviously he's a little bit emotional, which is why he's so good at what he does. He is my husband, but before we were ever even anything, I loved running calls with him because the experience that he has, he's so good with people, especially elderly people and kids. He never had kids of his own, but he's so good with kids. And I always said if something happened to me, he would be the person that I would want to take care of me. So that's quite a compliment. But we love him, and we're going to take care of him the rest of the night, make sure he's recovering well, and I hope you guys aren't disappointed. So thank y'all for being here. I will keep you posted on, if you don't follow me on social media, you can follow me there. I've been posting a lot in my stories, trying to keep you guys updated on like day-to-day stuff and lots of Bailey content. It's pretty much Bailey social media at this point, but follow me there. And if you don't have social media, I do post on the community tab on my YouTube page to kind of let y'all know what's going on. So, with that said, thank you again. And thank you, Mary Bell, for being my moderator. Send me your Venmo so I can tip you a little bit, please. But thank you, Mary Bell. I really appreciate you. And I appreciate everybody that showed up to watch this. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the evening. And I will see y'all soon. Bye.